You are welcome to this section of teacher seminars. In this particular section, it's going to be a 3-day training. So this training will encompass teaching techniques, the various methods of teaching. We're going to see classroom management, games, classroom decoration, group work. Then majorly, for the day one, we're going to concentrate on the techniques of teaching, practical sections, and video learning. So first, in the first section, we're going to talk about the routines and rules during the first week of school. Listen to this video clip.
Good morning. My line looks so perfect already. Face forward for me, hands to your side. Face forward for me, hands to your side, zero voice. Face forward for me, hands to your side, zero voice. Thank you. Grab the line. Awesome. Wow, look at this. Hands to your side, facing forward. Good morning, Kiana. Welcome. All right, my friends. Are we ready to go? Yes? All right, we're going to walk to the end of the ramp, my friends. If you left your backpack on the side of the
So as opposed to getting started right away with standards, establish the culture that's going to happen in your classroom throughout the year. It allows students to feel comfortable and also get them to understand what you expect of them and then get to know how the classroom works.
Welcome. Look at that smile. Good morning.
At the beginning of the day, I always stand at the door and I greet students with either a high five, a fist bump, a handshake, or a hug towards the end of the school year. I just like to set my day off right with a positive tone. Who doesn't want to have a nice smiling face when they come in for work, basically? This is their job, you can consider. So when they come in, I like them to feel like I want them here, that I've been waiting for them to get here. And I believe that when you start your day off like that, you're setting them up for a positive day.
Right now, we're going to get your desk organized first, okay? So go ahead and take your binder off and you can put it down next to your table, or next to your seat. Just quickly on the floor is fine. You can check it out while you do so. In your desk, you're going to have two sides, a right side and a left side. And one side is going to be for your soft books, and the other side will be for your hard books. So here's what I want you to do. I want you to find your left hand.
It's important to invest a lot of time in your routines at the beginning of the year because that's when you have the most time to establish them. So I start at the beginning and I spend a lot of time on my routines and my expectations, doing things again, and even doing things again. And as the time goes throughout the school year, I have to spend less and less time, and those things become second nature to the students.
And you're going to put your My World Social Studies book on the left-hand side of your desk. And it goes in this way, not this way. So when I look in your desk, I should see pages, not spine, okay? Go ahead and do that now.
So the procedure for their desk organization is really simple. All their books that are paper-backed books, I like on one side of their desk, and then their hardback books are on the other side of the desk. That way, when I ask students for a particular book, they can look in their desk, they know what side it's on, and they can get it easily. I want students to be able to access what they need very quickly. Transitions are very important and they can take a lot of time if they're not established at the beginning. So I try to alleviate any hurdles from students that might cause my transitions to run long. And not being able to find something or something not being in its proper place is something that makes a transition very difficult.
Using the restroom during your recess, using the restroom during your lunch, is you showing me and everyone else around you that you are responsible. However, I do understand that things happen, right? Sometimes things happen. If you're in class and you have to go, you have to go. And so when that happens, you put one finger, just one, in the air, and then you wait for a nonverbal cue for me to tell you to go to the restroom. And it'll usually look like this. You put your finger up, I'll point at you, and then I'll point at the door. And that means that you may go. Okay? Now, show me the restroom sign. Thank you. Notice that there is no Miss Martin with it. It's not Mrs. Martin. That nonverbal signal is something that I can do while I continue to teach. So if I see a pencil hanging in the air, I can just go like this and continue talking. The same with going to the restroom or going to water, so it doesn't interrupt the flow of the lessons. I am going to teach you how to come from your seat to the carpet to meet with me, okay? So in order to do that, we need to be able to know exactly where we're going and exactly how we're supposed to get there, okay? So we're going to take some time and I'm going to show you exactly where I want you to sit and how I want you to get there quickly, okay? So for my ELA transition, I start with students' numbers, usually alphabetical at first, and then I give them an exact spot to sit on at the carpet. And then I explain to them exactly what I want them to do. When you hear your number or your name, I want you to get up, push your chair in, and come to this particular seat. Sarah, Adam, and Kaden, come. It's important to make sure that students are following your expectations. Sarah, on the first day of school, on the first week of school, because if students know exactly what it is you want them to do, or in this instance, exactly where it is you want them to sit, then they can rely on that, and that makes your transition so much faster, and then you can get to things like your lesson much quicker. No, honey, sit right next to her. Scoot up right next to her. Scoot up right next to her. During that ELA transition, I had them practice it over and over again because I want for them to know exactly where they sit so that they can get there quickly. Please join me on the carpet. It took us 1 minute and 8 seconds, which is not too bad. Okay, as we continue to go throughout the school year, we are going to be looking to chop down just a little bit second by second at that time, okay? But look at, everybody remembers where they're supposed to go. Give yourselves a round of applause. That was very good for the first time. Think about where your spot is, because I'm going to set the timer. Remember, it took us 1 minute, 8 seconds yesterday. Let's see if we can shave a little bit of time off of that today. Go. 56 seconds. Good job, my friends. Excellent work. All right, my friends. So Brennan, kids pick up on things, your attitude, your behavior. So you want to be very cautious of those things at the beginning of the school year, because students are looking at every piece of you as a teacher, and they're also looking at every piece of your classroom. So you want to make sure that you're warm. You want to make sure that your classroom is inviting, that they can see themselves as part of this classroom, and that they know that you want them to be there, and that this is a safe place for them to be throughout the school day. All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 2 of 4th grade. How are you feeling? Good. Did you go home yesterday completely exhausted? I was so tired yesterday, and guess what? My legs were super sore. Yours were too? My legs were so now that we've wrapped up the first week of school, I am just scratching the surface of working on routines and procedures. It's something I will carry with us the entire school year. At the beginning of the year is not when you stop working on routines and procedures. And every time you introduce something new to students, you need to establish a routine and a procedure for what it is that you're introducing. It's a signal to me that you need help on directions, Just a little.
Section 8 on morning meetings, a daily strategy for learning. It's very important that teachers take cognizance of morning meetings. Let's listen to this.
Good morning. Morning, Sebastian. Welcome back, sir. We missed you yesterday. Good morning, Miss Blessing. Morning, Araceli. So even before they enter my classroom, the social emotional learning is beginning. So I go and I pick them up outside. I say good morning to them there, greet them with a smile. Even if I'm having a bad day, I always have to smile and put everything to the side. And then we walk together to the door, and then that's where we do the greeting. And I love that greeting because it's a choice. So if they feel like giving me a hug today, they give me a hug. If they feel like giving me a high five, it's a high five. And then I have some, today's just a wave, they want to give me a wave. And I always say good morning, or I give them a compliment about what they're wearing. Or if I have a student who is out, oh, thank you, I'm glad you're back today. Just to let them know that I do care and I am noticing when they're here, and I'm letting them know that it's important that they're here. Hi, Miss Genesis. Are we going to talk today? Yes? No? All right, so we always start with our feeling check today. All right, so if you're feeling a little angry today, put a 1 close to your heart. If you're feeling a little sad, a 2 close to your heart. If you're tired, a 3 close to your heart. If you're happy, a 4 close to your heart. And if you're excited, a 5 close to your heart. I am 5 today. Very good. So we have lots of feelings today, lots of mixed feelings. Anybody want to share why they're feeling a certain way today? So my morning meeting begins with the feeling share, so the sharing, and that kind of gives me a feel of the class pulse. Let's start with Hannah. You're a little angry today. You want to share why you're angry?
Because my brother, he gets me mad.
Are you comfortable sharing why he makes you mad?
Because I remember he bought a toy and he has a toy hammer. When I went inside the office, my brother had hammered my backpack, so that's why I'm mad.
Oh, so her brother wasn't respecting her belongings, huh? That would make me angry too. Yes, I would feel very angry if someone went and put a hammer on my purse. Huh? Kind of the same thing? Yeah. Thank you. And the reason why we discuss the sharing is so then that can lead to a discussion about how to handle those feelings and let them know that those feelings are okay. I always let them know any feeling you have is justified, but we just have to learn how to handle those feelings properly. So the morning meeting sets up those discussions for me. My students need that opportunity to let me know if something's going on, and I have to validate those feelings for them, and then most of the time they're ready to learn after. Yes, it's very important for them because then it's going to be on their mind all day or they're going to be distracted. So I have to eliminate any distraction that I can and reduce the stress in their brain. Their brains are stressed out, so I have to lower that stress for them. Thank you for sharing your feelings. Sometimes it can be hard to share feelings, huh? But we're really comfortable with each other, so I think we're good. Okay, who's here today?
Oliver.
Oliver's here today, and Oliver and I, we had a little argument yesterday. I'm going to tell you about it later, okay? All right? Okay. You guys ready? Okay, so we're going to follow along or read with Mrs. Balderrama, your choice. All eyes need to be up here, though, okay? Ready? Good morning, fabulous firsties. So there's always a greeting at the door, the sharing aspect of it with the feelings, and then we always do the message. So the message, I love the message because it's so open-ended. I can tie it to curriculum, I can tie it to PBIS, I can tie it to vocabulary, community building, behaviors. As the weeks go by, the questioning gets a little more difficult for them. I go higher level thinking than just a what question. So we do more a why. What might be putting themselves in other people's shoes? That's harder for first graders. So I wait as the weeks go by to ask those more difficult questions. You guys ready to hear about the little problem Oliver and I had? Yeah. Okay, so I have my favorite snack is fruit. And believe it or not, I really, really, really love apples. Guess who else loves apples? So Oliver and I, we were doing some work after school yesterday, and I looked in my bag, and there was only one apple left. And guess who was hungry? Mrs. Balderrama and Oliver. We both wanted to eat the apple. Is that a problem? No. Yeah, because there's how many people? Two people, and how many pieces of fruit? One. I'm not going to tell you right now how we solved it, but I want you guys to think. So think about this. How would you feel if one of your friends took your last snack? So take a second. Think. Your friend took your very last favorite snack. How would that make you feel? And when you're ready to share how you feel about that, go ahead and raise your hand, and I'll give you Oliver and you can share. So boys and girls, remember when we're sharing our feelings, we try to use complete sentences. So a good sentence would be, I would feel blank. And if you want to tell me why you would feel that way, that would be great as well, okay? All right, who do we want to start with? The question is going to be the part where they're discussing or sharing, and sometimes it's feelings, and sometimes it's me trying to front load information or trying to activate prior knowledge as well.
I will feel mad because then I wouldn't have nothing to eat.
Yep, so someone took her snack, you would feel mad, because would you still feel hungry too? Yeah, so mad and hungry. All right, thank you, Brooklyn. Who else wants to share? So this is Oliver, and Oliver, he started out as just kind of like a talking stick tool. So I introduced him to the class, and he's our unofficial other set of eyes in the class. So basically, Oliver is my little helper. He lets the students know when it's their turn to talk. Having a stuffed animal, I think it does remind them of something soft at home. I always think back to Mr. Rogers. He reminds people to think back of their favorite toy, their favorite object when they're feeling stressed. So this little guy helps with that as well.
If I feel if my friend took my snack, I'll be happy.
You would be happy? Why?
Because I can buy more.
I like that, a positive attitude. So she said, okay, they took my snack. Yeah, but I'm going to be happy because then I can go buy a new one and maybe you can get a better snack. I like that. Thank you.
So the second section will be on the teaching techniques proper. Now you know the daily routines, the importance of morning meetings, okay? So we're going to look at the methodologies that every 21st century teacher should know. So the first one, it's on the flipped classroom, project-based learning, cooperative learning, gamification, that is classroom game design, problem-based learning, design thinking, thinking-based learning, competency-based learning. All these forms of learning in the classroom will require the skills to be able to deliver in this 21st century. So flipped classroom is a pedagogical approach in which the traditional elements of lessons are taught by the teacher, okay? So they are reversed. The primary aim is that the children go home and do this work. Sometimes we put them as online videos. Children rewatch it to make your timing easier in school. Let's look at this clip on flipped classroom.
First, the teacher makes a video that delivers the content they'd usually teach in class. Then they share it online with students who can watch it before the next lesson. This leaves the teacher free to spend class time leading activities that help students apply the knowledge. Students can rewind and re-watch a video as many times as they like and come back to class with questions for the teacher. So keeping up with the class is no longer an issue. Students can access the video at any time using mobile devices, giving them the ability to learn more independently. Instead of sitting and listening, students can spend class time applying knowledge in more practical ways. And teachers are free to spend their time working with students and giving them individual support and attention. The flipped classroom model is already making a difference to students and teachers worldwide, so get involved.
Next is project-based learning, the teaching based on projects or integrated tasks. So is today the best didactic guarantee for an effective development. So you give the children some project to do. You can put them in groups, you can give them individual projects. So they do their presentation. In such, you're inculcating learning and then trying to make sure that the curriculum contents are achieved. Let's listen to this clip on project-based learning.
Focusing students on a project, teachers put them on a path that deepens their knowledge and builds skills they'll need in the future. Here's what I mean. Mr. Simmons has always been a good science teacher, and his students do well on Friday's tests. Unfortunately, what they learned was gone by Saturday morning. That wasn't good enough for him. Soon he learned about project-based learning and decided to give it a shot. Mr. Simmons got the idea for his first project on microorganisms when nearly half of his students were suddenly absent with the flu. He asked his students why they thought so many of their classmates got sick at the same time. That lively discussion produced a lot of good questions and a list of things the kids wanted to know. Mr. Simmons then announced their project was to help elementary school kids understand, how can we not get sick? After dividing the class into teams, he got them started on the project. It was up to the students to ask questions, research, collaborate, give each other feedback, and figure out the best ways to make their points clear to children. One team chose to make an educational video on the connection between hand washing and avoiding the flu. Another chose to create posters to show how viruses spread. The project teams showed off their final work to an enthusiastic audience of parents and their children at a nearby elementary school. Sitting in the front row was our good friend and local rock star Claire, who saw a bit of herself in the students. It was clear that the project was a success for the students, the audience, and Mr. Simmons. His students practiced critical thinking, collaboration, and communication. The project wasn't about memorization, but learning in depth about viruses and how to prevent spreading disease, a lesson they will never forget. At the end of the presentation, Claire introduced herself to the students and told them that they were rock stars and that the world needs more people who can think like them.
On the list is cooperative learning, stronger together. So this concept, in a simple way, cooperative learning is a methodology that teachers use to group students together and then you impact on them positively. You can group these children in 3s, in 6, depending on the number of children in the class. You can pair them. Okay, so when they do this cooperative learning, it inculcates more of the curriculum content into the children. There is more participation. Okay, let's look at this clip of a cooperative learning.
Apple is a fruit. Apple is a fruit. Now look at this. What is this? What is this? What is this? Orange is a fruit. Good. Now what is this? What is this? Watermelon is a fruit.
So you have gamification, classroom game designs, okay? So you make your games in this orders. You can give points for meeting academic objectives, giving points for meeting procedural and non-academic objectives. So you just award your points. These are 10 classroom games, and incorporate them in the course of your teaching.
Motivate students by incorporating fun classroom games into your lesson. Here are the top 10 classroom games that will provide fun ways to engage your students in academic learning. Number 1. Charades. Select a student to stand at the front of the room and act out a word from your list. No speaking aloud. The rest of the class must then guess what the student is attempting to portray. Other students can shout out their guesses or put their hands up depending on your teaching preference. Whoever guesses correctly can act out the next word. You might like to experiment with playing as a whole class, where half competes against the other half, or in smaller groups with time limits. Number 2. Puzzles. Separate your class into groups. Or simply use table groupings. Then hand out a puzzle for each group to piece together. You may use images, words, calculations, or concepts printed, or stuck on card or paper, and cut into random shapes like puzzle pieces. Number 3. Pictionary. Students work in small groups. One student from each group is chosen to start, and they must draw the subject-related concept you state, within a given time 30 seconds to 2 minutes. The rest of the group must then guess what she is drawing. The first group to correctly guess the word wins. The game repeats until every student has had a turn or there are no more words on your list. Number 4. Categories. Put up a simple table on the whiteboard, with a different category in each column. For example, rivers, fruits, animals, or cities. You may alter the categories for difficulty according to your class's level. Randomly select a letter of the alphabet. Now, within a time limit, groups or pairs of students must identify one example per category. The first group to correctly do so wins. Number 5. Whiteboard bullseye. Split the class into 2 teams. Draw a target on the whiteboard, labeling each circular ring with a different point value. Quiz students individually on anything you want. If they answer correctly, they get to throw the ball at the target for points. The winning team gets a prize, a bonus point on the test, a privilege, etc. Number 6. The crazy ball game. Prepare a questionnaire for the game, based on a topic that you taught recently to the class. Divide the class into 2 teams, and choose a student from one of the teams to answer the first question. Don't allow the teams to discuss answers among themselves, as the sole objective is to test each student's understanding of the topic. If the chosen student answers correctly, she gets to throw a ball into one of 3 paper cups, each marked with 5, 10, or 15 points, and get points for her team. Keep the points on a board so that the teams can follow the progress. Continue to play the game between the teams until you've asked all the questions. The team with the maximum number of points wins. Prizes can be a homework pass, free time, and so on. Number 7. Headbands are also known as Pinoy Henyo. Here's a fun spin on the classic game of headbands. Instead of using headbands like in headbands, use sticky notes to write random words relevant to the grade's curriculum on them. Stick one of the notes on a student's head without allowing her to look at the word. The student has to figure out what the word on her forehead is by asking her peers for clues. If the word on the sticky note is flower, then clues can be pollination, colorful, spring, petals, etc. to help the player guess the word. Number 8. Paper ball. Get a piece of paper and write a question on it. Crumple the paper. Get another piece of paper and write another question. Crumple the second paper by layering it on the first crumpled paper. Do this again by layering all the paper with different questions. You now have a paper ball. Have the students sit in a circle. The objective of the game is to play catch or pass the paper ball. When a student catches the ball, she has to answer the question written on the first layer of the paper ball. If she drops the ball, then you get to throw it back at the circle. Continue the game until all the questions have been answered. Simple games like these will not only help you practice lessons with your students in the class but help the class bond too. Number 9. Memory card game. Create 2 cards with a matching concepts. This is the first pair. And then make more pairs with a matching idea. Mix up the cards. Lay them in rows, face down. You may pair or group the students and let them turn over any 2 cards. If the 2 cards match, they may keep them. If they don't match, they need to turn them back over. Let the students watch and remember each cards. The game is over when all the cards have been matched. The group with the most matches wins. Number 10. Making sentences. Look up sentences with words that you want your students to learn. Jumble the sentences and start writing down the unique words randomly on the sheet of paper. Ensure that the words are spelled correctly and are written clearly so that all the students understand. Give your students a pen and blank paper. Students have to form as many sentences as they can in 5 minutes. In the end, the student with the highest number of meaningful and grammatically correct sentences scores the highest. You may also group the students and let them compete with the other groups. Summary. The top 10 classroom games are charades, puzzle, Pictionary, scattergories, whiteboard bullseye, the crazy ball game, headbands or Pinoy Henyo, paper ball, memory card game, and making sentences.
Next is problem-based learning. It's a cyclic learning process composed of many different stages, starting with asking your questions and acquiring knowledge that in turn leads to more questions in a growing complexity circle. In other words, it helps you to do a critical thinking. Let's listen to this clip to gain more.
In the 1980s, somebody decided that haircuts were way too messy. So they combined the hair trimmer and the vacuum cleaner, and we ended up with the Flowbee. And I remember begging my parents for a Flowbee, and they said no because they thought I would use it on the dog, and they were probably right. But the idea there is pretty clear, that you can solve problems in unique ways. And that's the core idea of problem-based learning. Number 1, the need for problem-based learning. School exists in a one-size-fits-all factory model where students are expected to passively consume content. But here's the thing, kids aren't widgets, and one-size-fits-all is great for socks but lousy for minds. Kids need to dream and wonder and imagine. They need to design and build and tinker, and they need to think critically and solve complex problems. For years, the model has involved going to school, being compliant, getting into college, and then climbing the corporate ladder. But the ladder is now a maze, and our students need to know how to navigate the complexity of a global society. In other words, students need to be empowered to solve real-world problems. And that's why we have problem-based learning. Number 2, the history of problem-based learning. Problem-based learning began at Case Western University in the 1950s, although it wasn't called that at the time. And the goal was to provide real-world problems for medical students to solve. It soon spread to other medical schools and eventually made its way into business, law, engineering, and education. And by the 1960s, you could find elements of problem-based learning within the new social studies framework of Macialis and Cox, as well as Herbert Thielen's group investigation model. Problem-based learning fits well within the social family of education because of the emphasis on real-world problems and human systems. It's not surprising that many of the problem-based learning theorists cite John Dewey's notion of democratic education, as well as Paulo Freire's concept of critical pedagogy. In other words, kids need to be engaged with solving problems within their world. And here's the description of problem-based learning. There are 4 different phases. Number 1, you present or identify the problem. In some cases, the teacher decides on the problem. In other cases, individual students or the entire classroom community presents the initial problem. Phase number 2, they develop a plan for solving the problem. Here, students work collaboratively in this phase where they figure out what they will do in order to solve the problem. In some cases, it's a really small plan of action, but sometimes they might engage in research, brainstorming, and ideation. And in a few cases, they might even decide to build a product. The next phase is the implementation of the plan. In this phase, students test out their plan to see if they can solve the problem. And then finally, they move to the last phase where they evaluate the implementation. Here, students analyze the results and they also reflect on the process. Now, here's the ideal context for problem-based learning. Problem-based learning works best when students solve authentic real-world problems. Math teacher Dan Meyer warns against solving problems that contain pseudo-context, where students solve problems that don't actually reflect the way the world exists. So it's important that the problems feel real to the students. In social studies, students might broker peace in a war simulation. In math, they might determine the most efficient route for a trip. In language arts, they might figure out if a novel should be adapted into a movie. And in science, they might do a science fair project. But the key idea here is that it is not project-based learning, it's problem-based. And that's because you don't have to design a product. You're simply solving a problem. Ideally, students will solve problems that actually exist in their own world. And here's where the technology comes in. Our devices have a slew of apps that once required additional time and resources. And the problem-based learning provides a model that taps into both the connective and creative capacity of technology so that students can access the tools and the information to solve these real-world problems. So that is basically problem-based learning in less than 5 minutes.
Yeah, effective teaching, evidence and practice, okay? So it's important that when we teach, we should teach effectively. Delivery is very important. Now, what teaching strategies are you using? Listen to this clip and learn more.
A teaching strategy is the method you use to convey information to your students. There may be a particular strategy that works well with your group of students one year that won't work with your students the next year. Because of this, it's important to have lots of teaching strategies in your toolbox. Here are some of the top ideas for you to use. Number 1. Modeling. After telling students what to do, it's important to show them exactly how to do it. This will help your students who are visual learners too. Number 2, feedback. Students don't always know if they're doing a good job without you telling them. Regularly provide written or verbal feedback for individual or group assignments. Also, it can be beneficial to turn the tables sometimes. Let the students provide you feedback to tell you how you're doing too. Number 3, experiential learning. Students learn by doing, so create experiences for them to see the concepts in action. Let them practice the concepts in a safe environment. Then, they should reflect on the experience and discuss what they learned from it. Classroom activities that you could do for experiential learning include fun games, experiments, or simulations. Number 4. Student-led classroom. When students get to be the teacher for the day, they learn things that they wouldn't have learned otherwise. You could have students team teach or work in groups to teach a new topic. You'll find that other students will learn from their peers. Number 5, mistakes. If you ever accidentally spelled a word wrong on the board, you know that students love to identify mistakes. When you're teaching a new skill, make an example riddle with mistakes. Let students practice the skill by identifying and fixing the mistakes for you. Number 6, class discussion. Another way for students to teach each other is through class discussions. As students take turns discussing the subject, you can assess their knowledge and discover which student grasped the concepts and to what extent. Number 7, cooperative learning. Students learn effectively when they're working together. Plan activities that require students to work together and learn from one another. In the process, they also learn critical thinking skills, communication skills, problem-solving skills, and more. Number 8, inquiry-guided instruction. By asking questions and working together to solve the problems, students get to be involved in the learning process. The class can work together to determine the answer and report it. As students do the work to discover the answers on their own, they remember the concepts better and more fully. Number 9. Lesson objective transparency. Rather than letting your students figure out what they should be learning on their own, just tell them. Clearly state your lesson goals and objectives. You could announce it in class or write it on the board. Just make it simple and clear for all your students to understand. Then, they know what they're working towards and what they should know by the end of the class. This also really helps to reduce student anxiety. Last, number 10, the graphic organizers. Graphic organizers summarize the information in a concise manner. Using a flowchart, Venn diagram, or web, students get to see the information in a new light. This helps them organize the information in their minds so they can better grasp the new concepts.
So this section is adjourned. The one is adjourned for the next day. Thank you for watching this video, and please do have a lovely time and try and revise all what we have practiced.